Well, the FBI has now sent out a nationwide alert on the Maura Murray case.
College student missing since 2004 is hoping a long overdue move by investigators could finally uncover what happened to Maura Murray.
The mystery of Maura Murray has just been solved with a key witness. At the computer, fingers moved quickly over the keyboard while the soft beeps of a fax machine and a haunting tune played in the background. Despite endless efforts, the police found more questions than answers. What could possibly drive a bright young woman to vanish under such mysterious and chilling circumstances? Step with us into the dark mystery of her disappearance, where each new detail only raises more unsettling questions. 2 decades of mystery. Maura was the younger sister in a family from the South Shore of Massachusetts. She was known for her quick wit and the way she could make their parents and her brother laugh with her playful teasing. But beyond the jokes, she was kind-hearted, always caring for others. This was especially true when her brother was stationed in Korea after graduating from West Point. She often sent him packages and heartfelt letters that meant the world to him. Just when the family thought they could breathe a sigh of relief with her brother's safe return, a faded envelope postmarked 3 days before her disappearance surfaces unexpectedly, containing a message that could change everything they thought they knew about her. Maura wasn't just funny and kind, she was also brilliant and athletic. She broke records in cross-country and track, both at school and at the state level. Like her brother, she went to West Point, where she embraced the mix of physical and academic challenges for 2 years. But she soon realized that military life wasn't for her. So she made a big change and decided to study nursing at the University of Massachusetts. But this wasn't where the story took its worst turn. The mystery of her disappearance began on a cold Monday, February 9th, 2004. It's a puzzle that still hasn't been solved, leaving everyone who knew her with questions that remain unanswered. One morning, she sent an email to her professor saying there had been a death in her family, even though this wasn't true. After that, she quickly packed her things, got in her car, and headed to an ATM where she took out almost all of her money. Then she stopped at a liquor store, bought several bottles of alcohol, and started driving north without a clear plan of where she was going. Her sudden decision to leave school left everyone unsure of what was happening. Later, investigators found that she had searched for directions to Burlington, Vermont on her computer, though she never ended up there. She did, however, have ties to New Hampshire, where her family often visited. She knew the area well, especially around Bartlett, where she had spent a lot of time with her family. It seemed like this could have been where she was heading. The last known thing she did with her phone was check her voicemail. For several hours after that, no one knew where she was. By the evening, she found herself driving on a tricky, curvy road in Haverhill, New Hampshire. Unfortunately, her journey took a bad turn when her car slid off the road and crashed. A local soon reported the car off the road, thinking there had been an accident. Another neighbor went to check on her, who said she was a bit shaken, but otherwise okay. She also mentioned that she had already called AAA for help, but this seemed unlikely given that the area had poor cell phone service. But this wasn't the only strange part. When the police arrived shortly after, they found her car locked, but she was nowhere to be seen. This was just the beginning of what would become a long and puzzling mystery. The officer who first arrived noticed several odd things. A rag stuffed in the tailpipe of her Saturn, some signs of red liquid that suggested she might have been drinking, a cracked windshield, and deployed airbags. The freezing conditions of a New Hampshire February with deep snow and bitter cold made the situation even more urgent. Yet the police didn't seem to react as quickly as they should have. She had left behind some things in her car, like books, personal items, and some of the alcohol she had bought. This made it seem like she might have been trying to clear her head, but why she ended up in that specific area was still a mystery. By the next day, there were no signs of her, no footprints in the snow or any other clues. It seemed like she had disappeared in just a few moments, with no trace left in a place where every second mattered. But the worst part, her family wasn't even told right away. It wasn't until the next day that her sister, Kathleen, found out. The family was soon overwhelmed with worry and confusion. Why was her car found so far from home? Why wasn't she at school? Those first 24 hours were seen by her family as a missed chance. They felt the investigation didn't take things seriously enough. It seemed like the police thought she had chosen to leave on her own, rather than considering something bad might have happened. She was only 21 years old. Legally, she was an adult and could make her own choices. But the situation needed to be looked at more carefully. By the time her father joined the search a few days later, the most important time to find her or follow any clues had already passed. They walked into the police station, and you could feel the tension in the air. One of them quickly broke the silence, asking when the search would start. At the same time, another voiced their worries about their missing daughter and how the investigation was going. They fired off question after question at the officers, desperate for any small bit of information. It became clear that the father was stepping up to lead the search himself, feeling like the authorities weren't doing enough. The journey to understand her disappearance continues, each chapter weaving deeper into the labyrinth of this long-standing mystery, the intensive search. Kathleen Murray shared their efforts, describing how they had searched through the woods, hoping to find any trace of her. She made a heartfelt appeal to the public, asking anyone who had been near the accident site that night to come forward. It was a serious situation, and knowing where the daughter was last seen could make all the difference. The family's call for help became louder as they urged anyone who might have passed through the area to come forward, even if they hadn't seen anything unusual. They started to think she might have gotten into a car with someone, which led them to consider new areas to search. They refused to rule out any possibilities, knowing every option could lead to finding her. Search dogs had followed her scent for about 100 meters down the road before it suddenly vanished. Many theories were floating around, but none brought real answers. The family was left wondering if she had left on her own, if something bad had happened, or if she was lost in the woods. Not knowing was the hardest part. They put out a message of hope, asking her to contact them if she could, promising to act immediately if they heard from her. At the time, Facebook was just getting started, and it played a big part in spreading the word about her disappearance. Julie Murray acknowledged that the internet was a key tool in getting attention for their search. The rise of true crime forums online drew many people to their case. These amateur detectives pieced together bits of information, and sometimes they actually helped the investigation. But this wasn't the worst part. Along with the helpful tips came a flood of misinformation and wild guesses. The family had a hard time sorting through all the noise and false leads that came with this kind of widespread attention. As if that wasn't enough, they also had to deal with anonymous people online who were making things even more confusing. The family struggled to fight against the constant spread of rumors, trying to keep her story clear and true while facing a sea of anonymous voices and unverified claims. The media often focuses on tragedy, and the family has felt this attention deeply. They understand that staying in the public eye can help solve cases like hers by involving more people. However, this constant focus comes with a heavy burden. Their personal pain has become a public event, with Maura, her family, and their supporters sometimes being used for entertainment or to get attention. After some time, the family grew tired of the way things were going. They decided to take control of the story surrounding her disappearance. They set up a website where they could share accurate and trustworthy information, moving away from the wild guesses and attention-grabbing headlines found online. The website became a safe space where her story was told with care, without exaggerated or misleading headlines meant just to get clicks. This was one way for the family to take back control over her story, ensuring it was told with respect and truth. But that wasn't all they were doing. The family kept pushing for new leads, determined to uncover anything that could help. Her father, Fred, was especially frustrated by how the police handled the case from the beginning. Feeling ignored, he turned to the courts, trying to get access to the full case files, a legal fight that eventually went to the highest court in New Hampshire. Fred believed that if the police weren't using the information in the files, then he and his team could. They dug into every possible source, her computer, police interviews, hoping not to interfere with the investigation, but to make progress on their own. The family's lawyers pushed for more transparency, asking the state to officially call the case a criminal investigation. Up to that point, the authorities hadn't declared it a crime, which made it harder for the family to get certain details. By keeping the case labeled as a missing persons case, the police didn't have to share much about their investigation. The family held on to a small hope. If the truth involved foul play, then justice could follow for whoever was responsible. But even when the courts acknowledged the case was still open, many of the documents released were blacked out and didn't provide much useful information. Fred's search didn't stop there. He often returned to the place where she was last seen, sometimes going alone. Each trip was filled with rumors and local gossip, but there were also moments where real clues seemed close, like when a search dog reacted strongly in a certain spot, small glimmers of hope in their long journey. In a quiet town, rumors began to spread about a disturbing possibility that Maura might be buried beneath someone's basement. As the worry grew, Julie Murray remembered a tough conversation with Fred Murray, Maura's father, in his home in Massachusetts. He was filled with sadness, deeply believing that the discovery made by cadaver dogs was an important clue that the authorities had missed. The family wasn't allowed to go near the house in question for years, but after it was sold, they finally got access. The trained dogs were brought in, and during their inspection, they reacted strongly to one specific spot in the basement. This reaction suggested the possible presence of human remains. Fred, heartbroken, believed his daughter was buried there. He expressed his deep sorrow over not being able to bring her home and give her a proper burial. Next, we'll discover how the community's involvement adds new layers to the ongoing investigation of Maura's case. Murray's quest for answers. When Julie's daughter, Maura, disappeared, things quickly became complicated for her family and the police. Both sides grew more frustrated as Julie pushed to move the investigation along faster. Every conversation she had with her father turned into intense discussions about how they could get the police to take quicker action. Meanwhile, the police were busy gathering information about Maura's habits, friends, and daily routines. The officers were following strict rules, which made everything feel slow to Julie. Each minute felt like forever to her, while the police carefully documented every detail and checked every lead. They needed to build a complete picture of Maura's life, but this thoroughness clashed with the urgency Julie felt. Every passing moment only made her more anxious. When there's a chance that a crime is involved, the police have to be extra careful with how they handle sensitive information. They need to make sure that nothing they share puts Maura or anyone else in danger. This means balancing the need to move quickly with the need to be cautious, ensuring they find Maura without risking more harm. The police told Julie that she needed to be patient because rushing things could mess up the investigation. They spoke with her regularly, trying to explain what to expect, but Julie and her father were filled with fear and helplessness. Every time they got an update, it seemed to raise more questions than answers, making things even more stressful. Weeks passed, and the tension between wanting fast results and needing to be careful was always there in every conversation with the police. Julie found it hard to grasp the complicated process she hoped would bring her daughter home. The officers, understanding how hard this was on her family, kept working within their guidelines, doing their best to solve the case safely. Their persistence eventually got the attention of the media, and after a lot of pressure, the authorities reluctantly agreed to dig. As the preparations began, Fred held on tightly to the hope that they were about to find his daughter. She hoped that the excavation, expected to be brief, would finally bring closure and reveal Maura's whereabouts. An entire team of agents and detectives worked carefully to cut through the concrete floor of the basement, digging deep into the ground. They searched every corner, but all they found were a few insignificant items, perhaps a piece of broken pottery or an old pipe, but nothing that pointed to Maura being there. Sitting next to her father during the press conference, Julie could see the despair settling in. Every update from the search felt like a heavy blow, chipping away at Fred's hope. When he spoke to the gathered crowd, his frustration was clear. He admitted that this latest disappointment was harder to bear than all the others, echoing the pain of every setback they had faced before. He felt a small sense of relief because the thought of Maura being buried in concrete near the crash site was too much to handle. Still, that relief came with a bit of frustration as it felt like another dead end. They were no closer to finding the truth. The family had spent nearly 20 years waiting, hoping, and praying that one day they would find out where she was. In 2021, when human remains were found near Loon Mountain in New Hampshire, hope sparked once again. The location was only about 25 miles from where her car had been left. This news stirred up a mix of emotions, and the family was once again thrown into a painful, anxious wait. He couldn't stop thinking about what they might have missed, or if they had overlooked something important. Then an email from the Assistant Attorney General came, saying the remains were too old to be hers. It was another hard hit for the family, another wave of sadness. Over the years, they had learned to manage their hopes, but it was still painful every time. Even so, he refused to give up hope entirely. 5 years went by, then 10, then 15. But Fred Murray's need for answers was as strong as ever. The pain and uncertainty never went away, no matter how much time passed. Life moved on around him, but Fred often found himself mentioning her in everyday conversations, saying how much she would have loved this or that. These moments often left him feeling overwhelmed with emotion. Through the documentaries, the online discussions, and the passing of years, one thing stayed the same. She was still missing, and they were no closer to knowing what had happened to her. But this wasn't even the worst part. What really haunted them was the thought that they might never get answers. She has been missing for 18 long years, with soft, sad music in the background. It's clear how deeply committed the Murray family is to finding out what happened. One of her family members talks about the close relationships they've had and the recent losses they've faced, mentioning how painful it is for relatives to pass away without ever knowing what became of her. This feeling of loss runs deep. Still, the family stands strong in their resolve. They make it clear they will never give up searching for answers. From the very beginning, communities in Massachusetts and New Hampshire have shown incredible support. Year after year, people come together to search the woods and lift the Murray spirits. The family keeps talking about her case, and Julie Murray, her sister, believes it's important to keep the conversation going. She knows that even the smallest piece of information could lead to the truth they are searching for. But the emotional weight is heavy. One family member admits they can't just turn off their computer and forget about it. Every day they are reminded of her disappearance, and it's a burden that never goes away. What do you think happened to Maura Murray on that cold February night? Share your theories in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more.